So good morning, everyone. It's good to see all of you. Thanks, friends, for those who are saying that you've ordered my new book. In case you'd like to find it, you can find it on Amazon. It's called Timeless Torah, and the first volume was just released. It contains my thoughts on the book of Genesis, Bereshit, that we are in now. Let's get right to it. Parshat Vayishlach. This is a moment where so much is happening that you might miss this incredibly important and devastating section of the Parsha, a trigger warning. For those who are unfamiliar with part of what's in Vayishlach, it deals with issues of sexual violence. You might have read Anita Diamond's masterpiece, The Red Tent. I have it there on my shelf. She is a wonderful, wonderful author, and the topic is incredibly difficult. The character that is often overlooked in the Torah is Jacob's daughter, Dinah. Dinah, in the Parsha, is raped by a prince named Shechem. And this prince sees her, thinks she is beautiful, and takes her. Now, Torah is often a patriarchal document, but sexual violence stands out as utterly horrific. We know that it stands out as utterly horrific in the Parsha itself, not from a modern standpoint, because Dinah's brothers, Shimon and Levi, rescue her by slaughtering the entire city. Now, this is a very heavy topic for us to be broaching at this early hour. And so I apologize for the harshness of it, but it's in the Parsha. This is when we learn Torah, and Torah includes stuff we wish weren't true about this world. And so it's good to have midrash, like Anita Diamond's book, The Red Tent. The text itself is ragged. Dinah requires saving. Anita Diamond's book makes it sound like it was a consensual act. I think Anita would be, she's a dear friend, would be one of the first to say that she took midrashic license, using some sources. But Anita has led many efforts on behalf of gender justice. I know that she would be in tune with the general idea of this conversation. Now, in this week's Parsha, Shimon and Levi slaughter the entire town, and they do so in response and reaction to what happens to their sister Dinah, to what was done. Now, when Jacob hears of it, Jacob their father, he says, this is chapter 34, verse 30, right in our parsha. Vayomer Yaakov el Shimon ve'el Levi. He says to his sons Shimon and Levi, Achartem oti lahavisheni biyoshev haaretz baknani uvaprizi vani mete mispar v'nesfu alai v'ikuni v'nishmarti ani uveiti. Here's a translation. Jacob said to Shimon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me, making me odious." Love that translation. Among the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites, my fighters are few in number, so that if they unite against me and attack me, I and my house will be destroyed. It's fascinating to see this, because Jacob doesn't say, Shimon and Levi, you've done wrong. He says, my sons were vulnerable. Your pursuit of justice has made us more vulnerable in the public eye. It's a very, very interesting way of responding. This is, of course, men talking to men. Where is Dinah's voice in all of this? It's one of the reasons Anita's book is so very important for us to read. But the question I'd like us to ask, and for this I turn to the great late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks for his wisdom on this parsha. He has a tremendous comment on this, pointing out that later in life, Jacob, when blessing his children at the end of the book of Bereshit, this is chapter 59, verses 5 through 7, points directly to the violence of Shimon and Levi and says they are a pair, their weapons are tools of lawlessness, and he attacks them for their anger and their violence. Cursed be their anger so fierce, and their wrath so relentless. And so this would make it seem that not only was Jacob concerned with the public impression, he also, later in life, seems to be pointing to the wrongness of the violence itself. So these are the verses in Genesis. Here is something that Rabbi Sachs said, quoting Rambam, Maimonides, and Ramban, Nachmanides, two different philosophers, theologians, who had very different approaches both to text, to truth, to God, to life. They're all part of our sacred canon, so we put them in conversation with each other. Rambam, Maimonides, brings in the idea of the Noachide laws, the Shiva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, the 7 laws that according to Jewish tradition, even non-Jews must follow. These involve basic human rights. So he says, this is Rambam, quoted by Rabbi Sachs, Hilchot Melachim, the laws of kings, about the Noachide laws. Listen to this. How must the Noachites fulfill the commandment to establish laws and courts? Meaning, what happened, what was done to Dinah was wrong. Where does accountability live? According to this idea, accountability lives in that society. So they are obligated, non-Jews, according to Rambam, are obligated to set up judges and magistrates in every major city to render judgment concerning the other 6 mitzvot and to admonish people if they are violated. For this reason, all the inhabitants of Shechem were obligated to die, the city where the prince who raped Dinah lived. Shechem kidnapped, they observed and were aware of his deeds, but did not stop him. They did not judge him. Rambam is saying that you cannot be a bystander and escape the consequence of the actions of your neighbor. And that this is true not just for Jews. We have a phrase, Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Bazeh. Jews are responsible one for the other. And that's why when one of us does wrong, we all feel it. When one of us is in pain, we all feel it. When one of us does something majestic, we all feel it. And when one of us is finally freed, we begin to breathe again as a collective family. That's true within the Jewish family, but how powerful to think about Rambam's approach to the non-Jewish communities. They are also responsible, through Jewish eyes, for adjudicating justice. And therefore, Rambam says, Shimon and Levi, by holding the entire city accountable for what their prince did to Dinah, were exercising justice. Ramban, Nachmanides, on the other hand, points out that Jacob criticized his sons for their violent act, which seems to imply that it wasn't correct. We are left with a question, and I'm not going to try to resolve this in any real way, except to point out that it is a real question in our lives. In our lives. How do we hold our society and ourselves accountable? Do we have different standards within our family than we should have beyond? Meaning, are our neighbors the same as family when it comes to collective responsibility? In fact, this is another quote from Rabbi Sachs from the Talmud in Masechet Shabbat, page 54b. There is the rule that if you can protest and you don't, you are implicated in crime. If you can protest and you do not when something wrong is being done, you are now implicated as a partly responsible person. Shimon and Levi held an entire city accountable for a terrible wrong that was done. Again, if this were a modern text, we would hear Dinah. We should be hearing Dinah. Their father responds saying, what will the neighbors say? And then later saying, violence is wrong. And commentators throughout Jewish history have approached these texts wondering what the limits of collective responsibility truly look like. This is a very, very big question for us. Here in New York, we have this question. In the United States, we have this question. In the state of Israel, we have this question. But the question of who counts as we or us, that's actually at the core of these comments by Maimonides and Nachmanides. Is every community held to the same standard? where they are implicated with each other's conduct? Are we part of a larger society, implicated in the conduct of those around us? Well, I would side with Maimonides on this. That collective responsibility is true of citizens and neighbors. We must stand up. Because after all, as the Talmud teaches us, if you can protest and you do not, you are now part of the problem. Let's hold on to this. Let's think about it, friends, as we go into another day where we are called to act responsibly and with love towards building a world where justice is more easily achieved. Let's take a breath, send our hearts to the east, and sing. Kolon baleva penima nefesh Yehudi homia ulefate mizrach kadima ayin letzion Sophia od lo avda tikvatenu התקווה בת שנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון Vayishlach. Am Yisrael Chai. See you tomorrow, my friends.